Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting virtual experience with the Foss Waterway Seaport, and of course myself, Chris, with Pretty Gritty Tours. And tonight, we are finally unveiling the long-expected, much-anticipated, dedicated work of local artist River Reishi in Mother of Waters. Now, if you were there for Ocean Fest in the past, you have seen already a rendition of Mother of the Waters, but this has now become a mural that occupies a 324 square foot wall inside the seaport. If you're not familiar with the seaport, the Foss Waterway Seaport is, of course, the old Balfour Dock building, which was constructed in 1900, and now is a 124-year-old edifice that has stood watch over the changing tides of time and Tacoma. Once the longest grain warehouse in the world, today the last remaining section serves as an interpretive education center, waterway museum, and marine heritage space. The time came to renovate that building, though, and what do you put inside of something like that? Boats from the region, obviously, but maybe something else that's both an homage to the past and a message for the future. And that's where River was tapped as the artist for this. Tonight, not only will I reveal what the mural looks like for you, but we do get a chance to talk to River herself. And I am really delighted to share this interview with you. She is a remarkably intelligent, incredibly talented woman, and I think just the opportunity to hear from her and her process is uplifting from the ground up. So you guys have questions, comments, let me know as we go throughout the way. We are, of course, live broadcasting right now, and then I encourage you, go out, visit the seaport, get to know it, and see this mural in person. But before anything else, a word from the Puyallup tribe.
Arti duf arti swatwiftud atis poyalapabs, a slasasil, alti disha tu alturi tuha.
It is the land right here that the Puyallup people have lived on since the beginning.
This
right here is where we are in the world, our homelands.
Uyayushas atiswatufted atistu ishachas. Ukachachas tisbadadachas. Uoch twatichalalt atiswatufted atispoyalapabs.
We work on our ancestral lands. We raise our children who go to school on the land of the Puyallup people.
Ohegwachas ti shwananam tliti, ohashitab ti pasted okweredu.
We acknowledge that the Medicine Creek Treaty was signed for the whites to take our land for their benefit. Ohashitab atis shwananam tliti atiswatwifpudchas. Otsuti pasted squat lup swatwifpudlup.
Land was assigned to our people. The Caucasians said, "This is your land," and they took that land from us too.
Our land was stolen from us. Treaties were broken.
But we are still here today. Our people forage for food and materials, we pick berries, we canoe, we practice our traditional ways, and we speak Twelshutsi.
Just as our ancestors did.
We are finished.
Now, if you are interested in more about the Puyallup tribe or the Twelshutsi language, we're going to share some links for that here in a moment. I think it's particularly relevant for tonight's experience. But let's also take a moment to acknowledge River, the artist in question. And you've probably seen her work already, even if you've not been familiar with it. She is on several of the electrical boxes throughout Tacoma now, represented as a local artist in the area. She's been part of the Lights Trail that takes place in downtown Tacoma seasonally. Again, Mother of the Waters has not only been a part of Ocean Fest previously, but is now also present on an electrical box here. And then she has several great prints and pieces that she's developed over time, including one of my favorites here. This is of the two maidens that decorate Wright Park. If you're not familiar with the maiden story, it's delightful. She was also on the cover of the newly reprinted Volcano. So if you've seen any of these around, well, you're already familiar with River in a little bit. Without a doubt, you're familiar with our subject tonight, Mother of Waters, or Mount Tacoma, the mountain, Mount Rainier. Many names are applicable tonight. And I think going through the variety of those and what each of them means is important to this entire experience, and acknowledging its prominence and, I mean, intrinsic value to the region. Not just an icon, but literally life-giving for the whole of this area that we live in. So without further ado, let's reveal the mural and then we can talk to River. There she is in all of her glory. And I'm a big mural fan. I think they change a place, the sense of that place, in ways that people often don't, I think, really fully recognize. But I've been traveling with my in-laws recently, and one of the things that they noticed while we were abroad is the graffiti in a place or the murals in a place, and it changes your opinion, both conscious and subconscious, about a space, and gives you a sense of what it's about, or can push you away based on the art that's there. So the installation of this mural has been transformative for the space, both in a very like physical sense, but also, you know, really on a metaphorical level as well. And so tonight we're going to talk to River, hear from her about her thoughts and her process, and get to know her a little bit. And I would also just like to say, it's good to see you guys too. I've missed you all. I feel like I'm not online as much as I was previously. So this is nice to be back. So please chime in with your questions. I think River is at the unveiling right now, but hopefully we'll get to hear from her beyond just the interview. So let's jump in. River Reishi, my friends.
I'm an artist named River Reishi, and I am in the Tacoma Pierce County area making art, which you know, you'll notice my tagline on my social media. I was trying to think, like, how do I summarize myself in like a sentence? And I just put, you know, I'm a human, you know, artist making human things, which more and more is kind of a rarity.
This is very topical right now, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, I am a human.
Yeah, very, very premium thing.
Yeah, I
So
promise.
where did you kind of get your start as an artist?
As someone who, I guess as a kid, I was kind of a neurodivergent kid, and I was drawing before I could speak, and that was a way for me to kind of unwind from the demands of just being being a human in everyday life, right? But yeah, drawing became this window for me to just kind of metabolize my feelings. And I think a lot of kids draw as just like a part of their, you know, understanding the world around them. For me, it was always kind of almost like a compulsion. Like I'd be drawing on things even if I'm not supposed to. If I'm having a phone conversation, that still happens. I get kind of zombie hands and I'll be drawing on things without realizing it. I've ruined a lot of things that way. And I think more recently in my life, I've been trying to funnel it into really taking that skill set and that inclination and making narratives out of it, using it to describe actual and articulate emotions and narratives. So that's kind of my more recent transition into fully embodying the role of an artist. Technically, I didn't go to art school or anything like that, but I was a cake decorator for a few years in Chicago. And that is where I learned a lot of my technical skills. So airbrushing, for example.
No way.
Yeah. There was a lot of airbrushing. That was back like Ace of Cakes era, right? And so
Oh
we
yeah.
were doing sculptural cakes, like a big Nike gym shoe, or I've done a ton of Louis Vuitton purses. That was like a popular thing back then. So I'd be painting all the little like, Louis Vuitton logos, and trying to make, things that look like leather out of fondant and gum paste. And so now a lot of my art involves, like I said, airbrushing, but also fondant and gum paste are a lot like clay. So I've been working a lot with clay recently and finding that like, yeah, I've been honing these skills for years. I just haven't been applying them towards things that aren't edible. So here I am
I
trying to
love this,
make
by the
them.
way. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question for me. Are you from the area originally, or have you just found yourself here over time?
Yeah, I found myself here over time. I was originally from Chicagoland area, and that's where I was a cake decorator, and that's where I was, for years I was doing food service, and I didn't go to college, and I didn't think that I would go to college, right? I just thought that was kind of, my lane. But I ended up here because I knew somebody that went to the University of Puget Sound, and I kind of applied there on a lark as an adult, and I was like, maybe this is for me, and I ended up getting like a full scholarship, like a full tuition scholarship, and I'd never heard anything about Tacoma or the Pacific Northwest. I didn't even know what it looked like. I just came here on this, like this hope to get a college education, and when I arrived, it was very like Wizard of Oz, like when it's like black and white and cornfield and like flat, Midwest. And then it was like, oh, like mountains and like charismatic nature everywhere. It was just, I had no idea what to expect. And when I got here, it was just like, so I was hooked from day one. It was like 15 years ago now, something like that.
Oh,
So,
then you're in. You get the club
yeah,
card after 10. Like
yeah.
you're
I
official.
mean, they say that you're like all the cells in your body turn over after 7 years, like down to the bones, right? So I've been here for 2 full body cycles.
Man, that's a fantastic way of thinking about it. One of the things that I was really curious about with River is, name aside, what was her connection to water? So much of her art that I had seen featured previously focused on a water narrative, whether it was mermaids or selkies or, rivers and oceans. And if that had just come together, if it had been serendipitous that she had been deeply interested in water and then the seaport got in contact with her and they found this, or if she had been sort of a broad spectrum artist and then leaned into the themes that the seaport were pitching to her. But as she'll explain here in a moment, it was a natural partnership.
Yeah, this is definitely a natural, almost coincidental partnership. So the sea, I say I'm from Chicago, but I was born in LA. And so some of my first steps were like on the beaches there. And I feel like maybe that imprinted something with me of like West Coast sea. I don't know. But I've always felt drawn to the sea. And I feel like the sea just, it's a very symbolic and mythological core to so many stories that humans throughout the centuries, throughout time immemorial, have used to articulate deep emotions that are hard to understand. And so, all the deities associated with the ocean, all the myths associated with the ocean, like these are ancient stories that still, to me, resonate emotionally, where I'm just kind of like, I feel like the water, there's something ineffable about it where it just describes things in a way that I feel very deeply. And so when I moved here, I started doing some of the cold water immersion. It's really popular now. I see so many people on the beaches. I'm like, where were you all when I was like
pioneering this craft. Yeah.
Yeah, because we wanted to build community around it back in the day, and people would stand on the shore and be like, "Are you guys okay? Like, do you need help? Should we call like the?" But for us, the little core group that I had that was doing this, it really was a way of feeling connected to the water around us. Like we drive by it, it's a backdrop all the time, right? But like I wanted to go in it. I wanted to be in it, and rather than take pictures of it, right? So I feel that way when I go to mountain streams, waterfalls, like I want to be a part of it, and feel that. So I think, that's what the plunging was for me, and that's kind of what the art is a little bit too. It's like really just using it as this vehicle to connect and understand things in myself and others.
So now, how did the idea of doing the Mother of Waters original exhibit come about? How did that conversation start?
This probably isn't the best answer, but I think Rosemary needed someone last minute. And I was so thankful for that opportunity. And so we didn't have a lot of time to plan, is why I bring that up. So it's kind of like, what do you already have? And I just happened to have all this art about water. So that, again, it was a happy coincidence. But I also was kind of working with Maurizio Robalino. He's a local artist, and he was showing me in his workshop like how to do glass and how to cut glass, and working with glass as a medium. And I was going to be doing something where I was going to take pulverized glass and melt it. And he said, come up with a design for us to melt. And so the Mother of Waters was the one that just kind of came out for that. I'm not sure why or from where, but it just came out. And it didn't end up working for that, but it ended up working for this. And so I was able to create this large figure on MDF. And I also have to give a shout out to Toolbox Laboratories, Aaron over there, because, I know how to do this with cake. I don't know how to do this with wood. And so people like Maurizio and Aaron have really been instrumental in helping me transition what I know into something that's permanent and archival and that sort of a thing. So I was able to, do some laser cutting of the figure in layers and conceptualizing that. And then Aaron really helped me learn how to use a jigsaw to cut out the larger piece and how to glue it together so that it really holds, and assemble it and move it and all of those things. And so then I had this kind of standing mural, and I wanted to create this as a backdrop to a practice that I do called sypanie piaskiem, which is Polish for the pouring of sand. It's a traditional Slavic art form, a temporary art form of making intricate designs with sand on a floor, on a space. So inspired by that, I was creating sypanie piaskiem, like sand drawing in front of this figure, the Mother of Waters. And that was kind of the artistic focal point of being the lead artist at Ocean Fest that year. And then my exhibit of my printed works were, that was kind of the secondary part.
Which I think there's so many layers of metaphor to even just that, the focus of this mountain, right? Pouring downwards, and then that it trickles out into these tributaries of art that you've also had. And I don't want to derail anything, but I love that it was such an impromptu thing in the beginning. I was just talking with someone recently about how the great arts seem to always be last minute, because artists are constantly just absorbing stimuli at all times before producing. So
creativity requires constraints. So if you look at an axiomatic system, you have to have a certain amount of if it's just kind of open forever, to possibility, it's really hard to actually create something meaningful. I feel like creativity and meaning need some kind of boundaries or constraints. And in this case, it was this kind of Ocean Fest, and it all fell together in a really nice way. But I do feel like it stimulated some creative solutions that we otherwise wouldn't have thought of.
Well, the exhibit was stunning, and I'm glad that there's a permanent representation inside the building today.
Yeah. So that was the standing mural. Again, as a cake artist and as a doodle artist on things I shouldn't be doodling on that get thrown away. Like it's really been my goal to try to make longer lasting things and pieces. And so we had the Mother of Waters standing mural, but the sand in front of it obviously is temporary. And I also think a lot of people didn't quite understand that she was supposed to be the mountain. So I had her at the end of this thing. I had a mylar river coming down the front, and on the side, the sand designs were all the things in our watershed that the waters nourish. So I had thimbleberries and symbols of, just all the things in our watershed. And it ended at the viewer's feet. So that's supposed to mean the viewer is the ocean looking back at the Mother of Waters, right? And when the executive director, Brent, of the museum, the Foss Waterway Seaport Museum, had said, we want to maybe put this up on the wall and like have a mural around it. Some of the initial ideas that they had were just waves and water, like that sort of a thing. But I realized I hadn't communicated very effectively that like she is the mountain, right? And so I was like, okay, the one thing that I want out of the mural is that it really communicates the watershed element of her.
Right.
And so that's kind of now I think it's very obvious. She's atop, she is the mountain. Her hair like going out like this, that's the lenticular cloud that you see over Mount Tahoma, like when rains are about to come. So you'll notice her hair's out like this in that lenticular shape with rain coming down. And then we have our rivers that are in that curvaceous shape that salmon love. So that was another kind of, ecological element that I wanted to include in there for the education staff, because they have an activity called Dream Stream, where they have kids kind of make streams in the right shape, and I kind of wanted to reflect that underneath her. And again, it ends at the viewer's feet, so the viewer is the ocean in this case, and there's also a water fountain right under it, so it's a little on the nose, but it's
As you've addressed, sometimes it can't be too subtle. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
What I'm very curious about is, what was your journey with that storyline? I feel like not enough people know that Tacoma means Mother of the Waters and is the original name of the mountain. How did you embark on that journey?
Yeah, well, so I'll start with the linguistics of it. When I was doing the Sapanya Piaskim, the pouring of sand, and creating the Mother of Waters figure, that was me trying to understand my ancestral heritage, which is Latvian, among other things. They have a concept called the mate, which are the mothers of different aspects of our natural world. So Upis mate, Udens mate, like these are mothers of waters, right? So it's like, what would that feel like to connect into that here in this sea, and really the mountain as the mother of our watershed, like that she became that focal point for me. Of course, then if you search about it, like it comes up, there are some articles that the Puyallup tribe had a name that could be understood to be translated to Mother of Waters. And some people say that Tacoma translates to that. I did reach out to the Puyallup tribe culture and language department to ask about that, just to make sure that I'm understanding that correctly. They were very careful to say that many different people from time immemorial around the mountain had many different words for the mountain, and that some of them could be understood figuratively to mean Mother of Waters, but it doesn't translate directly to that. They wanted me to be very careful about saying that. They said I could say that, but just make sure that people don't think that it's like a one-to-one translation, and that there might have been some subtle or colonial imposition of that translation onto that. So I just wanted to add that disclaimer that there's a lot of nuance and context there, and I believe very strongly in Leshutseed and Twelshutseed language revitalization, and I know one little error that we make well-meaningly could actually impact whether or not a language fully can revive and survive. So just wanted to add that disclaimer into the Mother of Waters concept.
No, and I appreciate that you did. What I like about the mural as a project is that it encourages, I think, people to approach this topic from a very personal standpoint while being mindful of the larger picture. What would you like people to engage with and walk away from?
Yeah. Well, so if we just drive by the mountain in the distance, we drive by the sound in the distance, if we drive by plants and such in the distance and kind of fuzz it out as background noise, we ignore our direct connection to it. We ignore the fact that even the vapor that we are breathing right now is made up of water from that watershed that we're in. It's 75% of our body. It's not just something in the distance, it's us. And I do have a background in conservation. I worked for 7 years at the conservation district, and I think it's there that I learned that the disconnection and dissociation we have with the natural world around us is it is a product of the settler colonial mindset. And undoing that is really seeing ourselves as nature, not being separate from it. So that's really, I wanted people to understand that the mountain is literally a part of us, like through the waters right now. And that can help people understand, for example, there's a lot of campaigns to help them understand if they're washing their car, it goes down the drain and makes it to the waterways, which actually impact salmon, which impact orcas, which impacts, our whole system, right? So I wanted them to think about it holistically like that. But from the Indigenous sovereignty perspective, I also want them to understand what it feels like to directly connect to the land around us as us, so that they can understand how important Indigenous sovereignty is to the Indigenous communities around us, and really understand it on a personal level so that we can all kind of help move things in that direction from whatever vantage point each of us has.
And I feel like it's very much charting that course right now. If you could encourage people to kind of go to another, if you use the mural as like a call to action, what would you hope that people walk away feeling inspired to do?
Some people, when they've looked at it, they've told me they feel this, they feel touched emotionally in a certain way from the imagery. And I guess I would like them to look upon the mountain, feel that same thing, and reflect on their own connections to it. So, Upis Mate, Udins Mate, like these Mother of Waters, Tacoma, these are concepts we have around the world. All of us in our background somewhere can connect to it somehow. Like what is the way in which your family lineage can connect to that? And I really believe it's through that personal connection that we can understand something that might not relate to us at all, right? Like I guess I'd wanted to make it feel visceral and real so that people can understand each other and the people around them better. And, also understand protecting nature, because I think it's also a colonial mindset. When national parks were made, for example, and they moved all Indigenous people out, and they said, this is something that you're just going to look at and take pictures of. And that's what preservation means, right? So it's the idea that we need to preserve it as something that's on a shelf, rather than something that is the life force of people around us. And I feel like if people understood it as a life force of something around us, they would have understood treaty rights a lot better. So our local treaty rights, farmland preservation, for example, is not the same as preserving the actual plants that are, in the usual and accustomed areas of tribes that are in the treaties. It's like they didn't even understand the framework that Indigenous people were coming from. They couldn't even protect those rights. So I think conservation now is evolving to better understand what that actually means, what our role actually is in it. And I guess that would be my hope, is that people can empathize a little better on what it means to feel that connected to our environment and protect it as ourselves, protect it as a fellow living being, and not just something that we can take pictures of sometimes in the distance.
Something I think about frequently is the transition of the building at the seaport from a grain warehouse to now this literal gateway for people to interact more with the water personally. Do you think there's a clash between the sort of like history of boating and industry inside that space with the more conservation aspect of the mural, or do you think that those two narratives kind of feed into each other?
They necessarily have to feed into each other, even if they don't, right? Like it's from where we're standing now. I believe they really do feed into each other. I know the museum has an exhibit that centers the Puyallup tribe, has some of their boats, has some of their story and the interpretive signage. And I know they've been recognizing as an institution the power that they have in the narratives they tell and the stories they tell. And I think that's why they, are trying to hold more narratives like that. And understand that when we say boating in the area, like what does it mean and to who? And not to speak for them, like they've been very transparent. They have a lot of work to do around that. We all do, right? But I think things like this help move us in that direction. I know the education team, they're raising salmon for people to understand and connect with. They have the touch tanks so that people don't just look at the pier outside and think, there's stuff under the pier, like they can actually see it and touch it and feel connected to it. So I feel like the museum in general is taking that on really to have people have these connections, these deeper connections with the waterway. And the port certainly has been abused in an ecological sense for a long time. And it's also been a very politically fraught place where Indigenous rights and sovereignty are concerned as well. So those are some, those are bigger things than me as an artist or a muralist or even the museum as a museum. But whatever little way that we can add our corner and our piece to that larger storyline and just have people really think and feel, I think can be helpful. So I don't know that making a statement like that was the primary reason why I made it or painted it. It really was coming more from an emotional perspective and connection. But I think that we have some responsibility in those emotions and connections. And those are the things that I try to add to the interpretive signage that we're writing and, some of the framing of it when people come through and experience it.
Lastly, I'm going to ask you where people can find you and if there's anything that you would personally like to kind of communicate before we sign off.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at river.reishi. So it's a river and a period and Reishi. Reishi is Reishi. I think you can see it in the corner here. And yeah. And then I'm also on Facebook. I just made a brand new Facebook page for River Reishi. It was just my personal page that I was using before, and I'm actually trying to have a actual separate page. So you will find a brand new page on me on Facebook. Those are kind of the main places where I'm posting stuff. I also have a website, a My Portfolio website. It's riverreishi.myportfolio.com. And that's where I tell kind of the longer form stories that go with each work. So if people are interested in reading some of the stories and the narratives and stuff, that's where I would send them. And yeah, I guess the only thing I would leave people with is just to be not only thoughtful, but feelful. Is that a word? Feelful about the environment around them, about, what connects us. I mean, we're breathing the same air, we're breathing the same vapor, we're like in a watershed together. What does that mean about our connectedness? And then, connecting with history as well. Like, how do we feel and understand things so that we can move forward together in a good way? I know I talked a lot about like indigeneity and sovereignty today, so I guess I would want to leave people also with do more research, do your research on it without bothering the tribe necessarily, but they also have some resources that they themselves have published, so always look at those instead of what settler colonial, writers have written about them. But also I do not speak for the tribe in any way or any of the indigenous tribes here. So I'm just offering a perspective and some inspiration and some feeling, and hope that it inspires people to also understand all the context and layers of nuance, which I think in today's social media AI world is getting also more and more rare, like the attention span for nuance and layers. But I'm hoping that through feelings and through connection, people can feel inspired to dig deeper.
Huge thanks to River for taking the time to speak with us and give a little deeper context, a little more depth, if you will, to the waters that run through the art scene there in the Foss Waterway Seaport. If you are interested in seeing the mural, it is now permanently inside this 124-year-old building right in the center of it. So as you walk in to the Foss Waterway Seaport, it'll be there in the middle on the right. And I don't normally do this, but I'm giving you guys a challenge, I think, this time around. It occurs to me more and more that Tacoma, being entirely surrounded by water as it is, finds itself somehow isolated from water. And something that River was talking about that resonated with me very deeply is that there is sort of a lack of connect between water and interaction. One of the big reasons is it's icy as hell. But you don't have to necessarily cold plunge to be involved with the water. And my challenge to all of you for this summer is find a way and a time to interact with the sound all around us. Whether it's paddleboarding, kayaking, boating, whatever, find yourself out on the water. Not just because the geographical and physical perspective of it will, I think, be uplifting, but the emotional aspect of it, I think, is quite good as well. So, challenge issued. Let me know how it goes. I'm excited to hear stories from those of you who have never been on the water in this region and those of you who spend all your time on the region. Dean Burke, I'm looking at you, my friend. So once again, my friends, thank you for joining us for this third Thursday with the Foss Waterway Seaport and myself, Chris of Pretty Gritty Tours. I look forward to our next adventure, and it's gonna be some good stuff. I know coming up, we've got orcas, the Kalakala, and if I can pitch it right, where is Tubby, the dog that disappeared from the Narrows Bridge? Oh, something to look forward to, my friends. Until next time, have a wonderful evening, everyone, and I will see you soon. Keep on exploring.